Hi, good evening and welcome to Unsuited. Unsuited is powered by IDEX Legal and The Grey Matter. Our guests for today are a delightful mother-daughter duo. Well, their legal practice is fairly private in nature. They work closely with their clients to facilitate change in their personal lives. They're confidants and counselors before some very excellent lawyering skills take over. Please welcome Mrunalini Deshmukh and Devika Deshmukh Doshi today. Hi, Devika.
Hi, Tanisha.
Thank you for joining us. Hello, ma'am. Good evening. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, good evening. How lovely to be with all of you.
Likewise.
Hi, Devika. Hi, Mrunalini, ma'am.
Hi. Nice to meet you guys.
Yeah, thank you for gracing us on this very non-technical legal webinar. So it's very much about bringing out the personalities behind the lawyers. We're going to deep dive with you, Mrunalini, ma'am, first.
Thank you for having us here. Thank you for having us here.
Pleasure. So, Mrunalini, ma'am, you grew up at the government, GLC, Government Law College, before becoming a lawyer. And then, so just tell us a bit about how was that experience with, your father was principal at GLC. So what was that experience growing up in that college at that time?
So, it was a very interesting and I would say a very different kind of an experience. Because when I was born, my father became the principal of the Government Law College. And we had the college quarters on the top floor of the building, the GLC. And I have been there from as I understand, from age 1 or age 2 onwards. So the college was a very familiar environment for me. However, once I finished my graduation from the St. Xavier's College, I guess law was a natural, not even option, was a natural thing for me to do. Having lived with a man who was my mentor, my father, someone whom I looked up to, my guru, as they call it. And actually, we that's so much of law in the house. We were discussing a lot of things. And I think law was a natural thing for me to take up. And that's the reason I sort of joined, and the natural college was the Government Law College. It was like coming home for me when I really joined after my graduation.
And then, what was your thinking, when you started your legal career? What were your kind of aspirations about becoming a lawyer?
Okay, so when I joined the law college, in fact, a little earlier than that also, I've always been a very ambitious person, by nature. One of the reasons was my father, who really fueled that ambition in me to be to do something on their own. He was a great motivator. So when I joined the law college, honestly, I was in two minds, whether I should finish my law and join the profession, or should I join politics? Because politics was also something which fascinated me immensely. I'm happy to share with you that when I joined my GLC in the first year, we had the college elections where I contested in the first year as what is known as a ladies representative that was there, which was as good as the secretary of the association. And in GLC, and I'm talking about way back in the 80s, in GLC, it was like a political fight. We were there. I was supported by a group of people who were from the Congress, if I may say so, and the others were supported by the non-Congress people. And we had big election campaigns, etc., of course, within the precincts of the college. But that's the fascinating part of the college. It offered us so many opportunities, so many options, and also made us motivate that. So whilst we were studying and all of us were doing, I was extremely active in the moot courts, as we used to have it those days. I presume you have it today also. And those moot courts were like mock courts, and like we would sort of don a robe and go and argue a case for a plaintiff or a defendant, whatever the matter was, do a lot of research, bring out case laws, and argue for all the sitting judges of the Bombay High Court then, who were invited as special guests to deal with it. I remember Justice Pratap, I remember a couple of them who were there and who motivated us and inspired us to become lawyers.
What had you choose law over politics then? Because it sounds like, you know, either could have gone your way.
So politics, nobody encouraged me to do that. I was the only one who was jumping about wanting to get into politics. But everybody said, no, that's not meant for you. You take up law, that's a better profession, that's more stability, there is etc. So I guess it was more from that point of view. And I had no specific agenda of going into politics. It was just a fascination that I had. So, which continues even today. But the fact remains that ultimately I chose to have law as my profession and started studying the 3 years of it.
So what's stopping you from taking on politics now, ma'am? Because the country could really use people like you, you know. So if you're making that transition, please make it slightly swiftly.
You could ask the other panelist who is also on this whether I should be taking this up.
It?
So I think no. So I think now it's all right. Now I can be only involved in it from a distance and things like that. But yes, I think I'm happy that I've chosen law as a profession, and I'm very happy that I've been able to pursue that. I've also studied with a view to be teaching law. So I was a professor of law at the Department of Law, University of Bombay, and the KC Law College, where I was teaching constitutional law. So it was a combination of being a law teacher and a lawyer. I was not too sure what I wanted to be very honest.
Okay. And shifting the focus to you, Devika, you've had, your father's a surgeon, you have doctors and lawyers in the family. I know that you had varied interests after class 12, and then somehow you chose to study the law and then go ahead and practice it, went off to do your master's. What's that journey been like for you? And now you work with your mother, so that must be fairly interesting as well.
Well, honestly, there was a tussle between my mom and dad. Okay, my father wanted me to be a doctor, and he put his heart and soul to ensure that I was the best at biology, and he really developed a great interest that I still have till date about the human body, and it's just so fascinating. And the other thing I was very keen to do was hotel management. And coming from a very typical middle class Maharashtrian family, I was told, are you going to clean people's toilets? Are you going to peel, 100 kilos of potatoes? Is that what you've studied all of this for? And, obviously it was all in jest. So choosing the law was 100% my mother, who's really pushed me. In fact, she went to the extent of trying to push one of my very close friends also to try and take up law, who finally chose to do journalism and didn't buckle down. But I did. And I'm glad that I did, because I'm really enjoying the law. I don't technically work in her chambers. We do work together. We do work as a team, but I'm not in her chambers per se. But this has been a great journey, and I'm glad I did choose it.
That's lovely. And ma'am, coming back to you, you took a large sort of sabbatical in between before you actually picked off the practice that you currently are an expert in, right? So tell us a little bit about that sabbatical and how it came about.
So Tanisha, as I said, I mean, it's rather strange, and for girls of your age and your generation, it's going to be very strange to hear that. Whilst I was doing my first year of law, I got engaged to Devika's dad, and I continued my education second year and third year whilst I was married. So I had a Mangal Sutra, I had a sari, and I was to go. And I was the only one who was married in my college at that point of time. All my friends were unmarried, of course. However, after I finished my 3 years of law and I got my sanat, I did join the bar, and I was then working with the then Advocate General of Maharashtra, Mr. Arvind Bobde, who incidentally was the father of Justice Sharad Bobde, who is the current Chief Justice of India. So I had the privilege and honor of working in his chambers, and nothing like working in an AG's chambers as your first assignment, because you get a lot of work, a variety of work, and you can only observe and see all the big lawyers that come to the chambers, how they discuss the matter, what are their discussions, what is their body language. And we used to just follow our senior to all the courts. I remember we had Justice S.K. Desai then, one of the finest judges of the Bombay High Court, extremely handsome, extremely intelligent, very, very temperamental, but extremely, extremely supportive of junior lawyers. I remember going there and ask one of the matters, my senior told me to go and ask for some adjournment. So I went to the court and I said, Your Lordships, I am appearing for so-and-so, and I'm seeking an adjournment in this matter because we need to file some reply in this. So he just said, what is this adjournment about? Do you know what the matter is about? Fortunately, I had studied a little bit and I knew what the matter was, not the details, but just the basics and all. So I said, Your Lordships, I know this is about this. I'm appearing for so-and-so. This is what the whole issue is and all that. He's saying, I am adjourning the matter for 3 days, provided you make a presentation and you argue before me, and you will not get your senior to argue. It was a very small application. I said, okay, I will. You can't say no to a judge. I said, yes, Your Lordships, I will. And had it was all knotted in my stomach and things. I just didn't know what it is. But those were the kind of judges who pushed you and motivated you. And the more junior, more raw, more inexperienced you are, the more they wanted you to study and come up. And trust me, 3 days or 4 days, it was the next week that I appeared before him. And I argued that matter, very, very small, a basic application to some service matter. I remember that much. And I argued before him. And then at the end of the day, he said, I'm passing orders at 3 o'clock. I said, here I go. I don't know what have I done. Such a brilliant, intelligent judge who can even read the mind of the lawyers. He can read the mind of everyone. One of the sharpest judges of the Bombay High Court. And then, as luck would have it, at 3 o'clock, the order was in my favor. I mean, I couldn't jump in the courtroom, but internally I was really jumping and dancing that I could manage to get something. So these were the motivating moments which was there, which sort of started. But whilst I was doing this, I was expecting my first child. That's Vikram. Vikram is my older son, who is also a counsel in the Bombay High Court on the original side. And we were staying at Vadala, and my doctors asked me that I used to travel by train those days to High Court. And my doctors told me that, no, you can't travel. It's a precious whatever pregnancy, and you have to do that. So we said, okay. And then I took a break. That was in 82, July, August, if I'm not mistaken. Vikram was born in 83, March. Then I was busy looking after him, taking care of him. Devika was born in 1987. And I was taking care of her and looking after them. So I was a completely hands-on mom, homemaker, just reading some news items and say, oh, this is what happened in High Court. I wish I was there, but it's okay. I'm happy what I'm doing. So that was the kind of thing that happened. And I took a sabbatical for nearly 15, 16 years, by which time Devika and all of you were at a stage where you would leave for school around 8 o'clock and you would come back by 3. So that gave me so much of time to do something for my practice, and I worked that. And during the time that my children were young, and I mean, they were very, very small, I did my master's in law because it was easier to sit at home and study. And I must make a mention here, Tanisha. It was my friend, a very good friend couple, and who was my neighbor then, who was instrumental in motivating me to do my master's. He said, listen, you're a very dedicated mother to both of them, but why can you not study? Don't practice law, but study law. Empower yourself with more knowledge. And I said, that's a good idea. And he really motivated me. And I did my master's whilst my kids were young. I started doing part-time teaching for once a week for an hour or two. That was there. Yeah, that's the way it was. And once my kids were these kids were coming back out from school around 3 o'clock, I started my practice absolutely raw, absolutely on a blank slate. Because Tanisha, you can't imagine after 15 years of sabbatical break or something what it is. It is as good as entering the first day of your college.
True.
of
And
law.
where did you learn? Whom did you learn from? Because I don't think you had a dedicated senior for this practice, right?
No. I had no senior. In fact, the fact of the matter is that the reason I took up matrimonial law was because it was no, not it was only because it was closer to my home, which was in Bandra. My home is in Bandra East. The courts are at BKC. So if I walk down, it's 10 minutes. If I drive down, it's 5 minutes. So I knew that if I had to come back and my kids came home, I could rush back and I could balance both the things which was there. So that was the only motivating factor for me to take up matrimonial law, because that gave me the time and the liberty to practice law and also be with my kids once they are back from home from school.
Sure. So you learned essentially, I'm guessing, from court clerks and
Yeah.
judicial
So what
officers.
happened is when I joined this, as I was telling you, it was like a fresh slate, not knowing anything which was there, just sitting there and watching judges do something. And I didn't even know how to make an adjournment application. I was so blank actually with the procedural part of it. So yes, you are so right. Sorry, you're so right. It was the fantastic family culture of the family court, if I may use that, where the staff, the stenos, the sherastedars, even sometimes the peons some of them were graduates, would help us to do how to do it, how to make an application, how to tell the judge, and things like that. Most of my, when you file a petition, then there are certain technical objections which are there. What a technical objection, I didn't know. So it was this clerk from the filing section who would teach me that this is what it is. Get your law. So I think I really owe it to them. I had no dedicated senior. I had nobody. And I just was this whole lot of determination and a burning ambition that, okay, now I've got an opportunity to do. I want to do my best to the best of my ability. That was the driving force which really motivated me to do that.
How wonderful. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
Devika, what was it like? Because like your mom said, I mean, moving into the matrimonial side was kind of, it was convenient because, she had you guys as young kids and, the court was nearby. So her whole career and where she is today has been shaped more because she's trying to get the family work-life balance and manage the kids. But what was that like for you growing up then? Like your mom mentioned what it was like growing up at GLC and how that really kind of impacted her. You mentioned your dad's surgeon, your mom's a lawyer, but what was it like having a working mom as well? Because even today, it's a challenge to get that balance for women to, be with a family and develop a career. And a lot of women actually give up their careers and their passions and what they were doing once they're married and once they're kids. So what was that like for you growing up, with that kind of mom?
So growing up, I mean, this was much later, I remember my mom was always working very hard. We're all early risers, and she would wake up at 4 a.m. and reading her briefs, reading, all of her big law books at that time, which baffled me that books can actually be that big. I remember there was this old gentleman, Mr. Kharkar, who was one of her stenos, who used to come home every Sunday. And I would really hate the fact that, he would be in the living room and she'd be dictating and, he'd be typing out all of her petitions. But I mean, now that I think back and I see the amount of work that she's put in, she says it very casually that, oh, it was a matter of convenience that I live in Bandra East and the court is here. But I have seen her put in the hours. I have seen her work so hard. I have seen her, I still remember, I used to sit on her lap when she was, studying for her LLM, and she tells me all of the stories. And I have actually seen how hard she's worked to reach where she is at the moment. And she's always willing to learn. Even to date, she doesn't think she knows enough about matrimonial law. I mean, she really doesn't consider herself as a family law expert. She's constantly, she has this thirst for ambition. And sometimes I have to tell her, just take it easy. Like, can we do something that's non-law related or non-work related? And she just can't. She can't take it easy. So it's a lot. That's basically what I've grown up seeing. I've seen a very hardworking mother. I have seen my father, of course, being a surgeon, being in the hospital all day. I've seen my grandmother, who's also a professor and, has done her PhD in literature and was the head of the department of Marathi. And I have had such great role models that I had no option but to imbibe some of these qualities, which if I'm one third of what they are, then, I've arrived. So it was.
Devika, you missed out your brother talking about him as inspiration. He's a counsel as well, right? So were you not inspired by his
But we
hard
still
work
fight.
in long
Right?
hours?
I can never admit that I love or admire my brother. We'll always fight. He'll always beat me up, black and blue, like he did in school. Now he can't. But
Yeah, I trust you all are not putting on a show for your children. So
I mean, we try. We try to behave civil around the kids and teach them about non-violence. And I tell him, hello, you've given me the people's elbow and the choke slam. Don't you teach your kid about being gentle?
non-violent, yeah.
But yes, of course, he's a lot like my mother. He is also, I call him a geek because he's also a very, very hardworking counsel and who reads his law briefs and law books in his pastime and always wants to update himself like every lawyer should. So yes, definitely a lot to learn from this both sides of the family, but especially the Deshmukh side of the family.
Wonderful.
What made you come back? Because you'd gone to study in London, obviously, and do your masters at LSE.
Right.
So what? And many lawyers, once you get that kind of break, some spend more time in international markets doing different kind of laws. But what made you then come back to India?
So thanks to my mum, I had interned whilst I was in law college at GLC, the 5 years that I was there. And I was fairly certain that I wanted to get into litigation. So a litigation law firm first to learn, the nuances and the technicalities and the procedural aspect of it, and eventually become a litigator or a counsel. That is something I was very clear about. And going to London, I knew I would have to study all over again, take the bar vocational course and, be called to the bar. And I was fairly certain that I wanted to settle in India. As regards matrimonial law, that is something that happened by chance. I remember when I was interning with one of the law firms, a sole proprietor solicitor, in fact, my mum was short staffed. She didn't have enough juniors. They were either on like marriage leave or whatever, maternity leave. And she asked me to help her out with some of her drafting. Coming from a very civil litigation background, I had to draft a divorce petition. And I did it very factually that on this date, this happened, this date, that happened. And I handed over the draft. And she said, what is this? It is so cut and dry. You need to be a little bit more dramatic. You need to, make your petitioner like a demigod and the respondent like a villain, with horns and those things. And I had no idea. I had no idea that's what, drafting a divorce petition would involve. Like I have to be a little bit more creative with my words. Yeah, you can't be very factual. Yeah. So it actually happened by chance. And then slowly I really started enjoying it. I really found the laws at times fascinating, at times regressive, not really in tune with today's time. So all of those things really got me interested in the matrimonial aspect of the law. And then came along surrogacy, which is something that is very dear to my heart, which I'm really also pursuing now. So it's actually all happened by chance for me.
I think Devika, you can share the way we got into surrogacy also. It will be interesting for everybody.
No,
What were the
of course.
What were the challenges? I mean, you need not take the name, but what were the challenges and things like that?
I mean, it has been a very evolving, legal subject, and there are still no laws, and it's all in the vacuum. And having to deal with those hurdles, and having to hear stories of couples or single people who've tried everything in the book to, expand their family. I mean, and listening to their side of the story, and bringing that joy to them has also been so satisfying work-wise. So definitely that's something we're both very excited to do.
Have you ever met the children that you worked on maybe surrogacy agreements for? You
Yes.
have?
I haven't.
Yes.
I've seen
Yeah,
videos.
Devika, we did see the kids.
Yeah, but that was just the one case. But no, otherwise it's just photos and videos.
But that's exciting, isn't it? I mean, even seeing a
Absolutely.
picture,
It
I'm
really,
sure it evokes something in you.
absolutely. I mean, the joy that you see on the parents and the single parent, as the case may be, it's just unparalleled. So
And also, Tanisha, I would like to add something here to the surrogacy part of it. I would get a lot of these, cases from Gynax, etc., more from the legal point of view, that how legally sound it is, and so on and so forth. Uh, my nature of work was something that robbed me of a lot of my time, and this was something I was finding it difficult to do some more research. So that's when I told Devika, will you start doing more research on this? What are the IC? Because there's no law of surrogacy as we know as we speak. There were the ICMR, the Indian Council of Medical Research, guidelines, which were updated every 2 years, 3 years, whatever the case was. So I must say something to her credit, that I trusted her so blindly to do the research in a manner that was so perfect, because we were dealing with a case of a single parent, and the law being uncertain, the social media being very against the whole issue which was there. He was a well-known social celeb. He is a well-known socially known person, a celebrity as we call it. And that is why it was very, very important for us to know that the documentation, the advice, and even counseling for that effect. And I must share this with you, that Devika and me have also counseled the person who became a father and had a surrogate children, sorry. To be able to do that, I think it was just not a legal thing. It was a combination of everything, and I think that's where Devika played an extremely major part, with her thorough knowledge of it. She just being on the top of all the ICMR regulations, not wanting to violate even one small little word here and there. At the same time, ensuring that the person is also taken care of, so that emotionally it was a very different kind of a thing which was there. We did a lot of effort, spoke to the surrogate mother, found out, because the belief was, oh, surrogacy, it's exploitation, commercial exploitation of the surrogate mother, were all the things that were going on in the media generally. And there was a lot of angst about this thing. I think that's where we did, and largely Devika did a lot of research, speaking to the surrogate mother, trying to find out whether it was really leading to any kind of commercial exploitation. Both of us went and met her there, and she seemed to be so happy, because with the money that she was going to get, she was going to buy a house, she was going to educate her children. And she said, what are you talking? I'm so happy I could do all these things. A, I can give joy to a person, and B, my whole family is going to get back and a better lifestyle, better education. So I think it was not just doing the documentation, it was a whole lot of experience that we did connected with the entire thing of surrogacy.
Yeah, I think compassion in a practice like yours and high levels of empathy are two very essential aspects to be able to successfully practice the kind of law you both do, right?
And your conscience, it should gel with your conscience, what you're doing, to a large extent. I think that's very important.
So speaking of surrogacy, because it's spoken so little of, is it? I just have one very small question around it. Is it compulsory for the surrogate mother that you sort of go with? Is it necessary that she should have had her own children and only then you can choose her as a surrogate? Is that
Devika is a better person to answer that.
yes, that is. And Tanisha, as I told you, the laws are still evolving. It is still at a bill stage. We're looking at it being passed anytime soon. So it's a vacuum at the moment. There is no regulation in place, and we're hoping that there would be some regulation, so there's no black market or unregulated exploitation of women, as is the fear. And we hope some regulation would come about soon.
Thanks.
Has that been a tough one? Because I'm sure it's quite a controversial thing, especially for a conservative society like what India is, and especially under the kind of current climate we live in. So that you must have faced quite a bit of, at times, negativity, I think, with trying to push forward with supporting surrogacy.
Absolutely. The first argument that you get is why not adoption? Why surrogacy? Now, sometimes each person, each individual has their right as to how they want to grow their family. And who are we to, dictate terms in how they should do it? Of course, if it's against the law, they won't be permitted to do it. So, yes, there is a lot of backlash for surrogacy, and I completely understand it is warranted backlash in term because there has been instances of exploitation of women, and there have been instances of couples abandoning children with special needs and disabled children, and it's completely warranted, the backlash that it does face. But that doesn't mean that we still work in this bubble and in this vacuum. If there's regulation, I think a lot of the matters would be solved. At least that's the attempt.
Sure.
Have you, I mentioned, obviously for the surrogacy one, you've given us a kind of example of some of the stuff you've learned through practicing, but have you got any other kind of interesting anecdotes from, both sides, from Devika, you and Mrunalini ma'am, of where you've got into doing some cases, matrimonial cases, and you've learned something very new that's kind of opened your mind to a whole new area, having represented some, doing some of these cases?
So do I go in first, Devika?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Far
So,
more experienced.
I mean, if I look back, it's been 20 years now since I'm in this practice. If I look back now and I see the number of cases that I've done, yes, there have been it's a whole broad spectrum of them. And I was fortunate enough to do a variety of cases. What I have learned over the period of all these interesting cases is that I have learned law, I have learned human mind, I have learned how emotions can go awry. I've learned that how, as a lawyer, you need, as Planisha rightly said, to have a sense of compassion, immense sensitivity, and immense patience and tolerance to listen to all the instructions or the way they are sharing this thing. I learned a lot in my practice on the Muslim law, that is the Sharia law. I remember I was doing a very well-known case of, again, the other side is a very well-known celebrity. And this was a Muslim case we were doing. And for the first time, I came across something where the family court, on a petition which was made by the husband, saying that this petition should be dismissed because my marriage to my wife is not valid because she is not done halala. So we said, oh God, what is halala? I mean, this was something I heard it for the first time. So apparently under the Muslim law, if a husband and a wife, there is a divorce which is granted or pronounced, not granted, talaq pronounced. And if the husband and the same husband and wife have to get back together and get remarried, they cannot do so under the Muslim law. The wife has to get married to somebody else. The second marriage of the wife has to be consummated. Then she has to divorce the second husband, and only then she can come back to the first wife. And this was a concept of law which I had not learned, which I had not heard. And this was something when we were dealing with. And I remember I must confess that I took a lot of efforts to read the law. We traveled all the way to Delhi with my client to speak to 2-3 Muslim scholars to understand what this entire law is, because this is absolutely a new arena for us. The lower court did not grant me the order where we were opposing the halala, but the High Court Division Bench granted me the order. And there, I think it was a very fascinating learning experience and a fascinating facet of law that I was not aware of it.
How long did it take you to get through that? Because that sounds quite a complex matter to have come up.
Yes, but it took us, by the time we traveled from the lower court to the high court and all, I think it was 2 or 3 months. And I was able to, and my client and me were determined to get it. We made 2 trips to Delhi. I vividly remember met some of the highest Muslim law scholars who were based in Delhi, learned a lot from them, took notes, made out things, and argued in the court. And we got the order. Yeah, that was a satisfying part of it. And it was more of a sense of justice, that how can a woman just be abandoned by some kind of archaic thing? utmost respect to the religion and the religious practices, but which was so against just throwing away a woman from a relationship was something that was against the dignity of a woman. And that is the reason why there was an extra effort on my part to really study, really find out what is a way out, and really give her that dignity which she rightly deserved. That was the passion behind doing this.
That's amazing. Devika, have you got any stories from your kind of practice?
Yes, I do. So, in terms, just very quickly about how I had to also learn to deal, especially in matrimonial disputes, when the client comes to you with so much hurt, so much anger, sometimes so much vengeance, and for you to not be perturbed with that, that emotion for everything that they're telling you, their bedroom secrets, and everything that nobody else knows, that they're confessing and confiding in you, and for you to look at that a little clinically, unemotionally, neutrally, was a bit of a challenge for me initially, obviously, especially as being newly married. Also, you start questioning, oh really, is that an issue? And that has been a little difficult to come to terms with, especially with custody battles, and to give advice, because it's like going to a doctor. If I go to a doctor and tell the doctor my kids are unwell, and the doctor's like, oh my god, the doctor's crying away, you don't want to go to a doctor like that. You want to go to somebody who's sorted and who can tell you, how they can help you best. So that has really been a bit of a challenge for me. And on a side note, and a really funny anecdote that I have, is that I have spent a good, I would say, 3 weeks trying to help a negotiated settlement about the custody of a cat. And we had to really draw up terms about the visitation and the medical expenses. And if one of the parties is traveling, you're supposed to give prior written intimation so the cat can be transferred from one home to the other. And it's like, it reminded me of one of those memes that, have I studied for 6 years to help with the dispute and custody of cats. So that has been a really
You
funny.
did that with a straight face?
I had to. You see, I'm emotional.
So freaky, I started watching Suits for the
Yeah.
first time because we interviewed Shardul Shroff recently and he mentioned Suits. So I got in from series 1. Yesterday we were watching an episode on a surrogacy battle over a cat with Lit. So it was Louis Litt fighting his other partner for a cat.
I have done.
It's insane. I'm like, oh my God.
And I have traveled from South Bombay to Andheri, which is quite a distance, just for the negotiated settlement on cats, because the other side lawyer was a senior to me. And I was like, oh my God, this is really not worth the travel time, but you have to do what you have to do.
Okay, that's interesting. Thank you both for sharing your journeys and these anecdotes so freely. It's been very enjoyable, but we're moving to a more fun segment now, right? So this brings us to the end of the interview round, and we're going to now move on to Word Sneak. For the benefit of our viewers, Word Sneak is where each of our guests are given 5 to 7 words each. They have to have pretend to have a perfectly organic conversation to weave in the words in the same order. The words will be displayed in your chat windows for the benefit of our guests. Devika and Mrunalini ma'am, I'm going to send your words to you on WhatsApp, so you can check your WhatsApp immediately and we can get started. We'll just quickly play the ABC. We're trusting the both of you not to exchange notes and not to share each other, your words with the other. Has Mrunalini ma'am left this interview because she doesn't want to play words?
No. I'm very much here.
Okay, no.
Yeah. So you tell me whenever I'm okay.
Okay, you'll have to turn your camera on, ma'am. It's
Okay,
off
I'll do that.
completely.
Yeah.
And it should be a fluid conversation between both of you. So it's not
Right.
Once you
stop,
leave
but
your
you're having a
words
conversation.
message to you here on the chat, they will display, then it'll be easier to display them on your screen. Would you prefer that?
So I have it, my whatever you've given me right now, but that's fine. You can
Okay.
put it on this also.
Sure.
That's fine.
You both can start now, please. And Devika, please don't look at your word chat, please. Thank you.
Not to. Okay. So, Mom,
Devika.
did you get those? I sent you some Malawi mangoes, which are quite sweet, and we tried them at home. And some of the imported strawberries. They were just simply delicious. Did you get them? I had them delivered to your house earlier today.
Oh yes, I did enjoy those lovely fruits. Thank you so much for sending it. But Devika, I mean, more than the fruits, what I really love about these things is the way they are grown, the trees, the tree houses which are there in the jungles, in the fields which are there. I think I would love to have something that live experience rather than having them just on my table, very fresh, Something to that effect will be very effective, I think.
I agree. In fact, I've heard people talk to the plants and talk to crops, so that they grow better. And like my favorite artist Beyonce once said, you got to put your love on top. So I guess that is also a very important part of getting the good produce. I guess maybe you should try some gardening and
Yes, and having that. Yes, absolutely.
you can do that. So it's interesting that at the beginning of this interview, you mentioned to Tanisha and Vikas that you've always wanted to be a politician. But I don't think they know that you cry every single time the national anthem comes on. And as a politician, you do know you're going to have to sing or be present at a national anthem. And at that time, you can't be crying the whole time. You're the biggest patriot I know, but a little bit too emotional when it comes to the Indian flag. I just show you an Indian flag and I can guarantee buckets of tears.
Well, well, that's the way I am. So that's the passion I have for the country, and that is why probably politics was something which was there. But having said this, Devika, I mean, I have seen a lot of people who are most eligible, either single women, bachelors, all eligible, but devoting themselves for the sake of the nation and doing things because that's what fascinates them so much. That's a passion that they have. And I really wonder, they do not want to have any of these family life, but go ahead with their single-minded devotion and passion to do for the country. I think I really salute those single women, those eligible bachelors who've given up probably the comfortable family life for the sake of the nation. I really feel proud about such people.
True, absolutely true. I mean, there are some people who um, create a bit of an obstruction and are very anti-nationalist, when they shouldn't be at times. And I guess we should just ignore those people, right? What would you suggest? What do you do with people who are trying to just ruin it for us, for the progress of our country? Should I?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And they need to be dealt with very sternly and very strictly. That's where I think somewhere the belief in God comes in, that if something is not going well, at least there is God above us. For us, Ganpati, and with Ganpati comes the delicious modaks, which your grandmother is such an excellent cook and makes them, and which your son, Shan, so loves it, but calls it a cookie. So I think if you see that God above us, yes, really, and I think God above us is there, and I think my nation is here to stay and to become a superpower. I'm so confident about it.
I agree. I mean, as much as I love the modaks, I do also enjoy my wine and bread and cheese. And that may not be a very Indian thing to love, but it is definitely one of my favorites. So I'm not going to be able to let go of that for a while, even though it may not be very good for the waistline.
So, so Devika, as you would understand, and you've seen it in our home whilst we were growing up and things like that, that every family members, whether it was Vikram, it was you, it was me, we always had our points of view, and we would put that forward, whether we were at the dinner table or we were sitting outside in the living room and chatting and things like that. And at times it would take a shape of arguing with each other. So probably that innate being a lawyer gets your putting across your views so sort of, translated into arguments, that I remember a couple of times when we used to talk, your father and your grandmother would say, hello, 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 this is not a court. Stop arguing. Learn to talk. Don't argue. So I think that's something that came so naturally for all three of us, Vikram, you and me. And I guess that's why we are in this profession.
You're so right. I agree. And it used to get so heated at times, our arguments at the dinner table, and we'd really be screaming almost at the top of our lungs. And I think we have to learn to be a little bit calmer. And I know you always tell me this, and I always tell you as well, that, let's just be a little soft spoken and patient. And honestly, motherhood, oof. That has taught me patience, and how I had no idea I could be this patient. Gosh, to have to manage a toddler who's just running all over the house and throwing things, it's really taught me a lot, and patience is definitely one of them.
I think I learned patience 40 years back when I got married to your dad. That was the beginning of learning patience. The rest has been history. And then came Vikram, then came Devika. Somewhere down the line, I may want to write an autobiography, become a published author, and just write anecdotes of what it is to be a wife, a mother, and a grandmother, and etc., and how it's really important to have patience written all over you.
And I think to that, you should also add chef, because, oh my God, the food that you make, especially the typical Maharashtrian masale bhat, oh, it's to die for. And that could be something that you could also add to your resume, besides family expert.
I think that's a very interesting part of it. My resume will have a lot of my hobbies and a lot of my sort of, what I do. But if you ask me honestly, what has really been my sort of greatest hobby right from a child, and this I'm talking about, I think when I was in the 8th standard or the 9th standard, has been badminton. And as you know that even till date of my age, I still, with all my limitations of age, movement, and so on and so forth, shortness of breath and all, I still pursue and that passion of playing badminton, to be able to sort of follow my dreams. So if not politics, yes, badminton, yes.
That's a great idea. You'll be great at that as well. Fantastic.
So at the end of the day, I mean, we've been talking about our passions, about what we like to eat, what we were doing, how we were arguing, and how things were there. But the most gratifying and the most satisfying thing for me, all this, and something which, brightens up my face, lights up my eyes and my entire thing, is to see my children and my grandchildren. The joy that I get from just being with them, seeing them, is unparalleled, and I cannot even ever think about anything that can give me greater joy than all of you guys being in my life. Sorry, I'm getting emotional.
Next time you give me a tough time, I'm going to show you a recording of this.
Well done, both of you.
And
that was
Anisha,
good.
You cannot allow anybody to use this as an evidence in any individual or even things, places.
This disclaimer should have come at the beginning, ma'am. Now it's too late.
Come on, it's all in the family, Tanisha. You can do it.
But so good. You both were so smooth, and yet kept it so relevant. Fantastic.
Thank you.
Well
Thank you so
done.
much.
This brings us to the end of segment 2, which is called Word Sneak. We're going to move on to segment 3, which is where you legitimately get to point a finger at one another, and you will not hear, hear from the other, because your entire the aim of this game is we ask you a question, and you, if you think it applies to you, you point inward. If you think it applies to the other, point outward. Please place your hands in a way that we can see what you're doing before the camera. And are we ready for this? Let's quickly play the AV and then start playing the game.
Also cover your eye. One hand covers your eye.
Okay. Ma'am, please cover your eyes with one hand. Keep one hand towards the camera, both of you, please. Vikas is going to shoot a bunch of questions and you have to respond. Go, Vikas.
Right. Who is the better lawyer? Okay. Who's more likely to go shopping without a wallet? Who's more likely to forget where they parked their car? Who's more likely to raid the other's cupboard?
Sorry, I didn't get you.
Raid the other's cupboard, wardrobe.
Raid the cupboard.
Steal from
She,
the
who
other.
else? She's a master at it.
Who is the fashionista?
She.
Whom do family members turn to for advice?
Devika.
Can't say
Who is,
that.
who is the bigger crybaby? Who's more likely to be indecisive with simple decisions? Who is the drama queen?
Okay, my turn. Who is more likely to shoplift?
Shoplift.
Yes.
Inadvertently.
Okay, then. Who is more likely to help a friend bury a body?
Oh man. Tanisha, you.
Your hand. Oh, I'm most likely. Okay, but Devika, you have to seriously answer that one. Oh, okay. Okay, who is more likely to use profanities? Who is more likely to own an illegal business?
None. None.
Devika used to run one back in college, ma'am. You don't know anything.
Ignorance is bliss. Tanisha, ignorance is bliss.
That is true. Who is more likely to eavesdrop on a conversation?
None. None of my children, and neither me.
You all are making this very boring. Who is more likely to fail a math test? Okay.
100%.
Who is more likely to order pizza or dessert in the next 48 hours? And the last one, who is more likely to forget the kids at school?
Me.
You both can open your eyes. Well done. I'm so disappointed that you all don't eavesdrop and you all don't want to run any illegal business. What a
No.
pity.
Listen,
But I'll just share one small example. When Vikram was born, I had gone to my dad's place and he was around 3 months of age. And the baby, Vikram was sleeping inside on my mother's bed. And we all had dinner and we left. By the time we got into the car, we realized, oh my God, Vikram is still there. So that's the reason. And this is something which has really happened to me. And then we went back because we just a first baby and you just forget about it. So that's what happened to me.
Oh
So that's the reason I admitted that, I could be the person forgetting.
Likely. Fair. Thank you for being honest. This was fun. Okay, we shall now move on to the last segment, which is called the interrogation. You both have to answer swiftly and accurately, and don't take too long. We'll quickly play the AV and then we'll get straight to the questions. All right. Are you both ready? Yes. So we'll start with one of you and then midway we'll just switch turns, okay? All right. So Devika, if not a lawyer, what would you be?
Teacher.
Ma'am, how about you? If not a lawyer, what would you be?
Prime Minister of this country.
Okay. Okay. One piece of advice, ma'am, that you would give, advice or warning, that you would give anybody who's considering getting married.
Oh, when you're getting married, go with your eyes open. Remember, patience is the key word. Remember, tolerance is the other key word. And remember, be gracious enough to accept that you are done something wrong or incorrect, and there's nothing wrong in apologizing. I think this is the warning that I would like to give you.
Okay. And Devika,
We
how
can,
about you?
Love is not enough. It takes a lot more than just being madly in love to, make your marriage work. And go in knowing that fully well, that it's not like they show you in the movies, which my husband often tells me.
Fair. Okay, super. Next question, ma'am, for you. You run your own chat show. Whom would you like to invite first and why?
good living person, difficult. Uh, someone like Justice Chandrachud.
Nice. So would we. We're hoping to make it happen someday. So yes, and the Unsuited team hears you. Okay. How about you, Devika?
Oprah Winfrey.
Of course. Okay.
You know that, Tanisha.
All right. What is, ma'am, for you? What is a recent trend that you're completely on board with? It could be fashion, it could be texting, any recent trend.
I think the recent trend which I'm completely on board with is uh, the how do I put it? The flexibility of adapting to your clothes, etc., according to what the season is or what the requirement is, rather than whether at the particular age that will go well or it will not go well.
Okay.
To be open to try out all those things.
Different things. Okay. How about you, Devika?
I read this research that 1 glass of red wine is equivalent to 1 hour of cardio. So I'm on board with that. I do my cardio very often.
Nice. Very nice. Okay. Next question. If you could know the absolute truth to one question, what would you want to know, Devika?
What goes on in the minds of growing babies, newborns and toddlers? I would love to know how their brain is growing exponentially and what sort of neurological connections are going on in there. That's something I really would love to know.
Like to know. Okay, fair. As a new mother, that sounds like a very fair ask. How about you, ma'am? What would you like to know the answer to? One absolute truth.
What is life really? And what is the reality of life? It may sound philosophical, maybe, but really I want to know what is the reality of life?
Okay.
What is transitional and what is real?
Okay, that's very, very sort of deep and philosophical indeed. Moving on to a more fun question. Ma'am, your job is to counsel and convince Melania Trump to stay married to Donald Trump. What do you say to her?
So difficult. What a difficult job you're giving me. My God, I'll have to use all my skills to do that. And tell her that, okay, the only answer here is known devil is better than the unknown. So please stick on. One never knows. Politics is so uncertain. 4 years down the line, you may once again become the first lady. So ladies, stick on. That's the only thing.
Okay, and Devika, you are in fact on the other side, and you have to actually convince her to move on very, very quickly. What do you say to her?
Well, I would say to her that, hello, lady, wake up. What is wrong with you? Why have you been married to this man for so long? Time to get out of this and smell the roses. There's way better things out there for you.
Okay, super. Well done, both of you. Next question, ma'am, for you. One time in your life that was a little challenging, fairly challenging, and what you learned from it.
So, in fact, the most challenging time was for me to get into practice after 20 years. I mean, after 15 years of a hiatus, and what did I learn from it? I think I learned I learned a very, very hard lesson of life, that nothing is impossible if you really want to do that. Secondly, there's no substitute to hard work. And this has been my sort of mantra for my work, which is there. And third thing, which I learned from that is life is full of surprises. And what you thought was unachievable is something that you can do it. And I think you have to work for it.
Wonderful. And Devika, how about you? The same question to you. A challenging time.
I would not really say it would be it was a challenging one, but it is definitely something that makes you think a lot when you're deciding as to the career that you're choosing, and in the career, the stream or the focus area that's going to be, because you never know if you're going to be good enough. You're never going to know if you are cut out for it, and you have to dive in head first. And that's what I've learned, that you always learn on the job. You're never ready for anything. You're never ready for a case. You're never ready till you actually even argue the case. So I've learned that you have to just dive in head first, give it your all, work as hard as you can, and then just leave the rest to, whatever the outcome's meant to be.
Super. Okay. One thing that experience has taught you, but you really wish it were taught in school. Ma'am, you answer that one first.
That experience has taught me, and it wish.
And how you wish you were taught this, whatever the learning in school, but you've actually learned it only through experience.
I think the only thing that I have learned through experiences is, of course, I repeat at the cost of repetition, that there's no substitute to hard work. I wish I had done that in school. I would have had better grades and better marks because I was never a topper. I used to flunk in maths. My art was pathetic. And so many other subjects that I was so bad, and I never even worked for it. But after I got into the profession, I learned nothing is impossible. And the only thing is the thirst for learning, improving, and working hard on it. I wish I'd done that in school. I would have got better grades, Tanisha. One doesn't know.
Fair enough. Devika, how about you?
I wish I would taught about finances and managing your money and, investing, because it's still such a struggle to understand whether you're making the right decision. And it's so important to teach money and, how to manage your money. So I wish I were taught that.
Fair. Okay. All right, ma'am, this is first for you. There's an earthquake. You have only 5 minutes to grab things in the house. What is it that you run for?
Oh, good one. My pair of glasses, my phone, and whatever money is available in my bag, and just run with that.
And your husband?
I can't carry him, no. So, but anyway, my husband he'll also run on his own. I don't think I need to pull him or push him and get it done.
I just wanted to make a mention.
I think that's a good point, but I did think about it, Tanisha. Thank you for making me realize that.
Anytime. Devika, how about you?
My son and, whoever close family that I can sort of get out, that comes under one. Number two would be all my important documents, your passport and Aadhaar, because you don't want to be stuck in that bureaucratic this thing of getting a new passport, Aadhaar and everything. Phone, money, and my memory box. I have a little memory box with things from my past, things from my son's when he was grown up. So that box is
wow, how nice. Okay, super. All right, next question, ma'am. What tells you the most about a person? Like when you meet a new person, what tells you the most about that person?
What attracts me the most, you mean?
No, like what is the measure by which you can really decipher a lot about who that person is?
I think the body language of the person, and once I see him or her in the eyes, I find out the sincerity part of it. I think one of the things that, Tanisha, my profession has taught me is to know people and to read them a little bit. I don't claim to be an expert in that, but I think I'm able to now read people who are really being genuine in what they're saying, and how much of it is a drama or how much of is it coming from something else. Yes, I think the body language, I would say so.
Okay. And Devika, how about you?
For me, it would be conversationally. Once they start talking, you immediately, you get a vibe, and you also realize, what sort of a person, the personality of the person, it just comes through.
Okay. EQ or IQ? What is more important, ma'am?
EQ.
Absolutely.
100% EQ.
Absolutely.
Emotional quotient. And I've been dealing with a lot of these cases, Tanisha, and on a little more serious note, when I see all these children in these custody battles, etc., it is so important for them to have that emotional quotient. As much as you can work on it, you may have you may have an average IQ, you may have a little less than an average. You can work hard, you can do it, but to have that emotional stability and EQ, I think is very, very important to make you a better person.
Fair. Okay.
Same.
What are your top 3 weaknesses, Devika?
Chocolate. Cute babies. And rom-coms.
Rom-coms. How about you, ma'am? Your top 3 weaknesses?
My weaknesses are food, which is sometimes unwarranted and undesirable, which goes straight into your hips, as they say. The other weakness is that professionally I'm able to read people better, but personally I'm very gullible and fall for it at a personal level, whether it's a friend or whether it's a relative or it's something which is there. That is the second weakness that I have. And thirdly, increasingly now, and I must say, I would want to blame partly to my profession and partly to all the trouble that my kids have given me, a little bit of my temper and my temperament. But I'm not responsible for that. It's one of them is on the show and the
Correct.
other one is at home.
It's them. Yeah, I agree. In fact, when you speak of the second weakness, Devika, because you're gullible, Devika's had you wound around her little finger for years now. So,
I wish.
Yeah.
True.
all right. And the last question on this segment, ladies. One thing, Devika, that you hugely admire about your mother.
Oof. There are only one thing, huh? Then it would have to be her persistent, relentless thirst to learn and better herself in every way possible. And the enthusiasm and energy and industry and all of that is admirable and very difficult, huge shoes to fill, which is going to be a task for me.
Ma'am, how about you? One thing you hugely admire about your daughter?
Her supreme intelligence, her head over her shoulders, and her in fact, you will be surprised. I sometimes go to her for an advice, which could be even on a personal nature, and share things with her, because I know the kind of feedback that I can get from her would be a very, very objective way about it, not getting involved, but being sensitive about it. So she has got this innate quality where she retains the sensitivity, but also the objectivity, if you know what I mean. So she has the mix of both. And that's why what comes out as an advice or a suggestion or something is absolutely something that has a long-lasting effect. And I have learned a lot from her, or I go to her for some of these things when I'm in a little bit of a quandary or not too sure about it.
Fair. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. All right, that brings us to the end of the interrogation round. Thank you, ladies, for playing it candidly and honestly. It was fun. We have a couple of questions that we're going to quickly ask you from the audience. Do you have a couple of moments to take a few questions, please?
Sure.
Okay, so there's one question where the person is asking, in this COVID era, we're hearing more and more about more and more domestic disputes. Can you share your views on this, please? Because, that we've heard that the pandemic and everyone sort of being homebound has led to more marital discord in some cases. Do you feel like that's true? That's what they're asking.
Is it for me or Devika?
You can go first.
Either one of you. Yeah, both of you. Doesn't matter.
So, yes. And we're talking about, let's say from April onwards, that I've been noticing that I have been getting quite a few cases which are there, which are in the nature of, and I don't mean domestic violence as in somebody beating up the other spouse or something, but violence has been in many forms, not giving enough money to run the house. Okay. Second kind of thing is, in some cases, online affairs of one of the spouses, because you've all the time in this world, and then whatever Tinder, I don't even know what those apps are,
Tinder,
but
correct.
Whatever, you get onto them, and whilst your spouse is in the same house, and then there is this lack of things which was there. So that is the other part of it is there. The third part of it is that because of the extreme, I think it becomes very difficult for 24 hours for two people to be in the same space, is only because each one of you needs a space, and getting you each other's face unnecessarily raises a lot of temper issues and a lot of adjustmental issues. I have seen a lot of people saying that, listen, he just follows me wherever I go. So good or bad? No, not good. Because I can't breathe. Because he's at home. I said, but otherwise your complaint is he ignores me. He doesn't even look at me and doesn't even do that. So it's been a mixed thing. And a lot of this is the lockdown. A lot of things has been the insecurity of the COVID and what may have happened to the near and the dear ones, or the cases that we read about it. And thirdly, and more importantly, it's just being locked in the house in the lockdown that makes matters worse. So there have been quite a few cases, I must say that.
Yeah, and also to add to that, I think some amount of uncertainty that all of us are experiencing as individuals,
Yes.
right?
Yes,
There's a fair
absolutely.
amount of anxiety. And for people who've had monetary impact on their jobs, there's also that angle that then sort of weaves into these relationships. So I guess there are many, many facets to it.
And also, Tanisha, just since we are on this subject, I got a lot of calls where, say, the non-custodial parent had visitation rights to the child. And because of the COVID and because of this lockdown, he was not able to have any access. Some of the mothers were good enough, or let's call it custodial parent, were good enough to give access through video calls and FaceTimes and things like that. But some of them were sticking to the rules because that was their way of getting back at the father by saying, no, it's COVID, you can't enter my society, this is not allowed, that is not allowed. And depriving the non-custodial parent of the child and child of this, and creating a lot of anguish and pain for the non-custodial parent. So this was not exactly domestic violence, but this was a lot of anguish for a non-custodial parent for not being able to see the child in case of custody issues or whatever separation issue. And the way they used to come, and some of them have really cried on the phone. And they said, why can we not see? I mean, what is this law about? I mean, if she's a mother and she can take care, why can't I go and see? I'll get my COVID test done. I'll do this, I'll do that. So that was a lot of pain for these non-custodial parents during these, lockdown periods, especially.
Sure. Okay. Thanks for answering that. Devika, maybe I can ask you the next question.
Sure.
So when people are considering getting married today, are there any legal aspects they should consider before making it official? Is there any advice you'd like to give couples that are getting married?
Well, absolutely. I feel like every other significant thing that you do legally, whether it's voting or buying a house or whatever it is, it always comes with some sort of instruction manual, some sort of, rules and regulations, but marriage does not. And you really don't know what to expect, and which I feel is so important to be well aware of what you're getting into, not only in terms of legally what happens to your assets and how you are looked at in the eyes of law, but also on a more personal level, that how your life changes a whole 360 degrees and how you can't be thinking about just yourself. So that is one thing that I would really like to ask newly people who plan to get married. And also something which is not which is considered to be against public policy in India, I think prenups are something that we should really start having a conversation about, because I truly believe when you have a very healthy relationship where you can discuss the what ifs, or if this happens, and if at that time where you have enough security in your relationship to discuss that if things were not to go down smoothly, then how do we divide our assets or how do we deal with certain situations, it speaks a lot of your relationship at that point and makes the conversation a lot easier at that point. And I really think we start having a conversation around making prenups enforceable in the eyes of law.
Okay, that's helpful. Thanks for that. All right, I think those were primarily the questions that were out there. Thank you for answering those. It was really lovely talking to the both of you. Thanks for making the time, for agreeing to do this, and just being yourselves.
Thank you, Tanisha, for not roasting me. I was really so afraid of being roasted. I'm glad you held it together. You can call me later and say all the things that you want to.
Absolutely. We will watch this together, and then I will give you live commentary when we watch it together. So that'll be a whole different episode. We'll charge for that, though. That won't be free for our viewers. So yeah, we'll definitely do that. But thank you. It was lovely having the both of you. Thank you very much, ma'am, for gracing us with your time and presence.
My pleasure. Thank you for having us here, Tanisha. It was indeed a great evening, must say that.
Thank you. Thank you, Tanisha and Vikas.
Thank you, Vikas. Thank you.
Thanks,
And
ma'am.
it was great interacting with you also, and sort of, sharing my thoughts on the subjects that you thought you wanted to know about it. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you.
Our pleasure. See you. Have a good evening. Bye.
Bye.